Greetings, Earthbound travelers. Welcome to today's episode of Cast Guidance. I'm Tyr the DM, World's Okayest DM, and with me always is Loch Clark, the unruly one. Hi, Loch.
Hi, how's it going, Tier?
Doing all right. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm surviving mostly.
I, I will survive. And that's all I can legally do. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I will survive in my Mach 5.
Go, Speed Racer. It's an ADHD day, so anything you say is going to cue a song for. And audience,
Cast musical tangent.
Yes, musical tangents. It's Cast Tangent the musical. Oh, today we're going to be talking to you. Oh, wait, we already have a question from the audience. What's your question, Ustad?
Oh no.
Yeah.
And we're waiting. He's typing. Hey, you know what? While he's typing, should I do the thing real quick?
Yeah.
Wait.
I'll do the thing, and then you do the thing, and then we'll answer his question.
Okay.
So, before we begin, we are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with any TTRPG play manufacturers, production companies, any of that. We are just two individuals giving our questionable advice on tabletop RPGs. Also, we are for mature audiences only. If you're not mature audience, GTFO. All right, there's my thing. Now, do your thing.
All right, so my thing. Hi, gamers. I'm Loch Clark still, and I'm going to talk to you about our partners in this endeavor, Level Up Dice, fine purveyors of luxury dice for all your sexy dice needs. Now, last week, I ran through a litany of new things in their new releases section and told you to go look at them. Today, I'm going to focus on one of those because I kind of glossed over the new True Stone line of dice. I wanted to go back and focus on my personal favorite in that line, the banded red, yellow, and blue True Stone. So what True Stone is they take a bunch of gemstones and they crush them up, and then they bind them together with resin, and then they use their CNC machine to mill perfect dice out of that conglomeration, and they come out amazingly precise and amazingly cool looking. They wind up being about 80% gemstone and about 20% resin. And go look at the banded yellow, red, yellow, and blue True Stone dice. They look like fingerprints. They have striations like certain like tiger's eye or something, but they're in these vibrant, bright colors. Really go check those out, and you can do that by going through our link, which is https://bit.ly/L, D, Will, Dice. That's bit.ly/LUD, Will of the Dice, all one word. Go check those out. Also, we'd like to thank the person who provided the theme music for our show, and that's our very own Patrick Taylor. Thanks, Pants!
Thank you. So
right,
Ustad wants to know why he does not have an object interaction, and he does. Putting a weapon away is object interaction. Drawing a weapon is object interaction. Putting a weapon away and drawing another weapon, that's an action. And so, there you go.
Yeah, now, there is a way to get two object interactions for weapon drawing purposes specifically, and that is to take the dual wielder feat. One of the perks of that feat is it gives you +1 bonus on your AC if you are wielding two weapons, and it gives you an extra interaction to allow you to draw two weapons. But you can also use that to put away a weapon and draw a weapon on your turn. So dual wielder feat is a way to increase what you can do. If you want to not spend your action, you have to drop your weapon and draw your other weapon, which means that you're just going to have to go back and retrieve that weapon at some point. And if you need that weapon later in the fight, you're kind of foobar. If you've moved away from it, then you got to move back to it and pick it up again. That's the whole thing.
And that's me being nice, because in my world, if you drop your weapon, I'm going to allow you to pull another one, because if you looked at it from rules as written, dropping your weapon would be considered an object interaction as well. So,
yeah, I thoroughly agree with you on that. You know, the act of just opening your hand and letting something go is not an object interaction, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Hi, Andromeda 844 says hi, Loch and Tyr. Hi, Andromeda 844.
Hi, Andromeda. You won things from us at some point, right? Yes, I remember. You won the cool set of dice. Look at you, all fancy like. We approve.
You'll be swank.
Yes.
When you're sitting at the table with other geeks, they'll be envious of your dice, and you'll be like, haha, I have power.
Yes. Because power is, in the perception of it. And other geeks bow down to those who have cooler dice. Everyone knows this.
It's true.
So, hey, Tyr, what are we talking about today? Are we just going to answer questions?
Well, if people ask questions, we'll answer them. In the interim, we'll talk about world building, part 1. Because this is going to be a mini-part saga, M-A-N-Y, not M-I-N-I. And I'm hoping to... no, feats are feats. They're their own thing. If you go to... Where is it on character sheets?
It is under features and traits.
Yeah. Features
and feats
traits.
Is all the way at the bottom.
There's a thing called feats. You're allowed to take feats or ability score improvements when you're leveling up. So if you go back, you can go into your character sheet, and wherever it shows the ability score improvements, you can change those and take a feat. You can't have both.
I mean, you can if your DM is feeling particularly benevolent, but
yes, but your DM
that is very rare. Right.
I did that with the game, and while it was cool, it made my life hard.
Yeah, it was, and it was a little overpowered. I was in that game. I'll cop to that. That it was. You only allowed us to take 1 point of ASI and a feat, so it wasn't as unbalanced as taking 2 points of ASI and a feat. But yeah, no. I lost my thread. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that I want to do multiple parts of the world building. Probably won't do them concurrently. One of the people I want to bring on the guest star with us, Locke, is Lee. He's one of the people that co-created Change Stars, the sci-fi TTRPG that I played in a one-shot in. That was amazing. Oh
I watched that that stream, and I was very jealous that I was not getting to play in that world, because it seemed very, very cool, and I was very like, oh, I want to do that. I want to inhabit that world, and that's the cool thing about world building, guys. Like, you make a world that's cool enough, and people want to inhabit it. Also, if you're like us, and I'm gonna speak for Tyr here without really knowing that I have the right to. If you're like us, when you find system mechanics that are just interesting, you want to play with them. And that was a cool, like, the system mechanics in that game seemed fun.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get them. They said they were open to it. We just got to get schedules ironed out. And
yeah, absolutely.
I would love to have them on as a guest star to just, sit back and let them talk about how they created this world and everything. I prepped for the show, but you couldn't tell it because my ADHD's like, hi, I decided to show up because you spent all that time prepping, and, well, I want to fuck with you.
Yeah, hyperfocus is a bitch, and then when it stops being there, you're like, ooh, all the things all at once. No, I totally get it. So, I'll ask a question then, and I think it's the important question. Um, so, world building, what you're doing is you're taking your standard sort of fantasy or sci-fi world, and then you're making adjustments to it. You're changing it to fit the story you want to tell, or to make it more interesting for the story you want to tell, or whatever, or just because you've always thought that didn't make any sense in a sci-fi world, or that doesn't make any sense in a fantasy world, and you want to change it for your world. So when you're starting to build your world, what is the first thing you look at? Like, what is the first thing you go, I need to figure out how this looks in my world? What's your first? I know what mine is, but I want to know yours.
Well, I want you to go ahead and answer what yours is.
Oh, mine's the magic system. If there's magic in the world, and magic can be tech as well, but like, am I using straight D&D magic, or is there, if we're playing in fantasy world and we're playing with D&D rules, is there something different about the way magic works in my world? Does it appear to work normally until this thing in the plot is going to show up, or is it or is there a difference? Some of my favorite worlds in literature have really interesting magic systems, and understanding how the magic system works informs a lot of the world. And so that's where my mind goes when I'm world building. I look at what's magic like in this world. Is it rare? Am I going to limit how many people play mages? Is it abundant, and the world is almost futuristic tech-wise because there is so much magic? You look at a world like Eberron is like that. So, yeah, you gotta. I think that's where I start. I tackle magic first. What is different about the magic of this world, if anything, and how has that affected the way the world looks? One of my favorite magic systems ever is I'm trying to remember the name of the series. The first one, the first book is The Black Prism. It's by Brent Weeks. Great series of books, and all of the magic is based on color and light.
Ooh, I haven't read that. It sounds cool.
It is really cool. Basically, the principle is, so when you light a match and you light a candle, the candle is exchanging something that is physical and turning it into light and heat. Magic does the opposite. The mage actually draws in the color spectrum of light that they are that they're looking at, and creates a substance out of it. And most mages the casting of magic in that world is called drafting. They are drafting an object out of color or light. And drafters can only access certain colors that they can see. So like you would have a red mage, or you'd have a green mage, and it'd be very rare to have a mage who could do two colors, and it's even rarer to have a mage who can do two colors that aren't next to each other on the RBG color spectrum. Yeah, so it's a really cool like, and how it shapes the world is interesting. And so that's where I start. I start with magic. What about you?
I also start with magic. I sit down and decide if magic is going to be in the realm, how much magic, what types of magic, if there's anything special about magic. For example, with Runith Kesha, magic was forced into the world. It was originally not part of the realm. It was birthed into the world, and what it is they basically found a way to harness the energy of nature. And that's why when shit gets too out of hand, you start having wild magic areas, and start having wild magic areas that affects nature, like it raining squirrels or snowing when it shouldn't, things of that nature. That's where I start. And with Runith Kesha in particularly, It started with the Great Falls, the 7 falls of the birthplace of magic, because each fall is magical and represents a school of magic. And then the 7th fall, being the Great Fall, is what ties them all together and bursts them into the world. That's where all of that entire realm started, was there. And then it started from there, built out the Kingdom of Mountain Crest, where the Great Falls reside within Mountain Crest, the Emerald Forest, which are the guardians of the falls. And then from there, it was known as Raven's Gorge. It got destroyed. There's a lot of different, but from there, and then it was like, all right, here's this continent. Now, how many more continents are there going to be? And that sort of thing. But it all started with the 7 falls. It all started with knowing how magic was going to work, who had access, if I was going to limit who had access. And when I originally started running Rune of Acacia, magic was limited. It has grown as more people have learned to adapt to how magic works in the world, and you have things like the Amber Spires, the Academy de Griff, things of that nature. These schools that teach people how to harness this magical power. But originally, I rolled, I think it was a D100, and that was the number of magic users, NPCs and players, and that was it.
So Black Dragon had asked, what are the major conceits, magic, fauna, society, gods? I personally, like in the real world, I think society comes first and then the gods. And I think that once you see what the world looks like, once you've figured out what the people look like, what the society looks like, then you know what their gods are going to look like, or you should have an idea. You can figure that out. Because it's, I guess you could work backwards from that. You could come up with a god and then figure out what the people who worship him and their society looks like based on the god. But that feels backwards to me.
So it depends. When I created Sharkandor, which is one of the major continents in Rune of Acacia, I created the gods there first and worked down. But then when created Talidegarios, the Minotaur Kingdom, I created the kingdom and the people and then created the gods. So it all depends to me on how inspiration hits. What happens when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and my mind goes, hey, this would be a great idea. Let's see, is this more a simulationist GM consideration? This is just us talking shit about tabletop RPGs and how we do stuff. 2 individuals giving our questionable opinion. Are gods universal or regional? Both. I have some gods that are universal, and but most of the gods are regional. Like Iron Sage, the kingdom, has its own set of gods. Glandamere has its own set of gods. The free cities worship along the lines of a mixture of the two. Talidegarios, the Minotaur Kingdom, has its own set of gods. Sharkandor, a lot of the people there follow what they call the old gods. It's a little bit of everything in how I do it.
Yeah, and I'm always I love the idea, and we see this in the in the real world in ancient history, like gods that showed up in multiple pantheons across that are basically the same god. Like, they have different names for them, but they basically they serve the same purpose. They have a lot in common, And usually it's between groups that had contact with each other. So I'm always fascinated by that, and I love putting that sort of through line in the campaign world where, over here they call this god one thing over here, and then they call him something else over here, and they call him something else over here, but it's really just the same deity. So then it becomes universal. But I think there are definitely regional deities. There are definitely deities are tied to people, the people who worship them, because deities, in my opinion, need the worship to exist, and to have power. They don't have power if they don't have people worshiping them. Their power diminishes, and so, gods are definitely focused on the regions where they are actively worshipped, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. And it's, so some gods I think are powerful enough that they've spread their influence to more than one culture. You look at the gods that have crossed over into Glandamir and the Free Cities from Iron Sage fall into that category in Rith Kesha. So they've become more universal. And that's a great hook for a campaign too, if you want to do that. Like, if you have a player who wants to play a cleric that is trying to proselytize and spread word of their deity, across the planet, and is trying to get their deity more recognized, and more widely worshipped by setting up temples and new places and things. That could be a really cool idea for the campaign, and then maybe that god isn't as cool as or maybe that god changes because people start worshiping a different idea of them, and it changes the god's fundamental nature. And these are all great things you could play with in a campaign world.
Yeah. But perfect example, talking about gods that are universal but are regional. So in the Iron Sage Pathos, you have Garth Dokeen. He's the god of the glorious death. Well, in the Mountain Crest, they have a god of the glorious death known as Eldarin Silverrain. But in Sharkendor, the old god, Votoshk, is the goddess of glorious death. So, I mean, you've got this one position which, if you look at it historically, if we're taking away, if we're looking at this historically, it was Votoshk, Eldarin, Garth Dokeen. So Eldarin came because of Votoshk, Garth Dokeen came because of Eldarin, and then like in the Free Cities, they worship Garth Dokeen, so you have that regional name for a figurehead that is globally accepted as this is a deity and this is what they do.
Yeah, and Black Dragon, you mentioned somewhere back up in the comments, making a major change to the animals, to the nature and the biodiversity of the world. That is a cool way to a good place to start. Like, that's the first question. Really, I mean, we said the first question that we ask is, how does magic work in this world? But really, when you boil it down, the first question is, what's different? What's different? And that what's different could be the way that nature developed, the way that did magic affect the way that creatures developed, and how did that affect early humanoid kind, and how did that affect societal developments? And those are interesting things to play with. So if you've got a world where magic affected the fauna of the world, and you got a bunch of uber dire beasties running around, and early mankind trying to hunt and survive, it might change development. It might change the way society looks now. And those are always fun things to play with. Those are fun questions to ask. And that's what world building is, really. It's a series of questions. You ask your questions and you say, hey, how does this affect everything? Why is this different, and how does it affect things going forward from the point where it changes? And you come up with some cool stuff based on that.
You can come up with some very cool stuff, like the Swamp of Morning Solace.
Mm-hmm.
People's pride and vanity caused them to be cursed, and they returned to animals, and that's why you have sentient animals in the Swamp of Morning Solace. That's why every time you all were there and Garbo ate a bug, I said, "Ow!" because he was eating a person.
Hashtag Garbo's a cannibal. All right.
Yes.
Not really. That's an interesting question. Is it cannibalism if you're eating a different demi-human race than you?
Maybe.
Also, have you? I'm sorry. This is completely a cast tangent, but have you heard of Hufu?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so apparently some science people somewhere have developed a meat substitute for human flesh. And it is designed for like research, like and just for the fun of, if you could, have you ever thought about trying cannibalism? Well, now you can without any of the negative effects. It's a thing. It exists. I don't know. I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess if you've got that murderous cannibal urge, maybe this would help. I don't
know.
But part of me is also curious and kind of wants to try it.
No, thank you.
Because
it's going to be expensive, and if you like it, then you're going to be with the whole dilemma of it's cheaper if I just go.
No. All right. Here's what I want to get: some Hufu, and I want to make it into shapes that look like short ribs. I want to cook it with barbecue sauce, and I want to serve it to my guests while we sit and watch fried green tomatoes. Is that so wrong?
Yes. Anyway.
Thought I broke you for a second there. Yes, I'm warped, Rush. I am very warped, and that's just me. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Hashtag not sorry. I don't apologize for my warp.
This is what happens when you counterspell heals, people. It warps your players.
Yep. Yeah, you should never counterspell a healing spell. Ever.
You should. Keep your players on their toes. Keep your players on their toes. But above board now, I do need to let Dan, who plays Garbo, know that every time that he was eating bugs in the swamp, he was eating a sentient individual.
Yeah, no.
You don't want to know, Draco Wynn. You don't want to know. All right, world building. And onward we go.
Onward!
Tally-ho! So, a lot of people have asked me how I come about with creating the actual land masses, kingdoms, and such. I use dice. So, when I sat down to plan out a world, like if I'm going to plan out a completely new realm, like Angramora, that is a mapped out realm. It is its own thing. The first thing I do is ask myself, how many continents is there going to be? So I'll roll a d6. And then I'll move to that continent and I'll ask myself, how many major kingdoms? And I'll roll a d6 or a d4 or a d8, whatever I'm feeling in the moment. That's how I break it down. And then I go through and decide what kind of society and stuff they're going to be. There is some really cool videos on YouTube of people using dice. Just go and Google D&D dice world building, where they assign things to each dice and they're rolling the dice, drawing the maps around the dice and the figuration that they came out with, and then using the number on the dice to set things like kingdoms and stuff like that. It's really cool. But that's how I do it. How do you do it, Locke?
I just I don't is the answer. I create all of it up here. Like, I figure out how many continents I want, all of that. I make notes. When it comes to what those continents look like and things like that, that was what I had a Mev for. My partner loved drawing maps, and so if I was creating a world, I would just come up with the basics of each society and land masses, the things that I needed story wise, and then I would just hand that in and I'd be like, make it go. And Mev would come back with a pretty map and have fleshed in things that I hadn't even thought of that made my world better. So now I'm gonna have to, if I do world building now, I'm gonna have to go and watch those videos with the dice. I've seen the videos and they are very cool, and I've kind of always wanted to try it, but I had no need to because I had a Mev. So yeah, that's that'll be the way I do it from now on.
I understand. When it came to battle maps, I had a Isra, or as the people in the D&D world knew, a Phi. And I would go to them and I would be like, I need this as a battle map. And then they would draw the battle map and it would be far better than what I thought. Now, luckily, I have a Kawaii Tornado. But
yes.
Who makes beautiful battle maps to use in Owlbear. But
all hail Kawaii Tornado.
Back during the day of tabletop and early Discord games, quarantine players, I had Isra.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was a puppy. Everyone got excited about the puppy.
Yes, that was Zoe. Zoe came for a visit. She's my little 35-pound Schnauzer mix. Or possibly is just a Irish Wolfhound that someone put in the dryer and shrunk. I don't know what do we
As you can tell, the ADHD is strong with both of us today.
Yeah, I completely. I had a thing for what came next, and then I lost it, and just gone.
Like I said, I spent hours prepping for today, but see, I made the mistake of I didn't write shit down. I just prepped up here, and I was like, I'll remember all this because I'm excited because I wanted to do world building, and now I can't remember any of the shit. Do you guys have any questions about world building or about anything? We'll get through this. We'll get back on track. But you guys ask really good questions, so
they do. I love our audience. They ask the good questions. Yeah. We're both. Ooh, look, a squirrel right now.
ADOS, attention deficit. Ooh, shiny.
Yeah. As I look up at my row of books and see if anything jumps out at me with an idea.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
We've talked about how you get started with the magic, what's changed, what's new. We've discussed how we do land masses and stuff. When it comes to world building, what do you dislike the most? What part of it do you just absolutely dread dealing with?
Taxes. No, but no, like that's sort of minutia, like that. Like, all right, I got to figure out a government system for this place. Like, if there's a place that I have a clear, that's what it is. I've found my way to putting my finger on it, which is when I'm interested in an area, when I have a good plot reason to focus on an area, and I really want to build that area and see what it looks like, I'm excited to go through all the minutia of building that area. And then you get that, well, I need to put something over there. Well, what does that look like? And I don't have a solid, like, mental reasoning for what's going there. I don't have a hook over there yet. But I need to put something there. And sometimes it's better just to, like just to be vague and say there are dark elves over there, and be vague about it, and come back and fill that in later. But sometimes you're in a position where the party's headed that way, or whatever, and you've got to get that place built, but you're not invested in it personally, in what is there on the map. And so flushing out an area that you're not invested in is the hardest part and the worst. It is just the worst when you've got to, I've got to make it different, and I've got to make it interesting, and I've got to, I've got to want to like it later when I want to, when the party wants to go there. Right now I don't care, and I'm not invested, and so I'm struggling to make it interesting because I don't have any real inspiration for here.
Mine is pretty much along the same veins. I'll answer your question in just a second, Black Dragon. I hate dealing with the minutia of the politics and the society and all that. Like, if I have a plot reason for this location, this kingdom, this city, or whatever, if I have something in it that, there's going to be focus on it, like Frenia and the tri-band council and all that, things that needed to be conveyed because of the story, then I can get that hyper focus and all day long. But then, like other places like Rookspire and stuff, it's there. it's there.
He leaves those places for us who are writing new characters to write a thing into the world. I have written several things into Runeth Kesha. I wrote in Helmson. The Helmson Academy didn't exist prior to one of my characters. I helped write the Pantheon for. I wrote most of the Pantheon for Iron Sage. I, with your permission, created the False Mountain that the dwarves live in the Free Cities, because it was an idea. That was an idea that was supposed to be a one shot, and we never did it. Was what started the False Mountain. There was talk of doing the story of why the dwarves and the orcs don't get along as a one shot at some point. And in the coming up of that idea, we struck upon the idea that the dwarves don't have a mountain of their own, that they built one out of iron.
Yeah. I let Ustad create some of the tribes of the Sea of Solace. Lollipop created an entire civilization that dwells in the swamp of Morning Solace, or Sea of Sorrow. Yeah, I Istrazelian, the Lost Islands. I let John create a lot of that because these are things that people get excited about and they want to be a part of, and there's nothing wrong with sharing. I'm going to say this right now, and some DMs would hang me up by my thumbs for saying this. There is nothing wrong with sharing world building with other individuals. They just become more invested into the realm and the world itself. Now, Black Dragon asks, major characters. Major characters come into play when I'm dealing out the campaign side of things. If there is a place that is going to have focus on it that is plot driven or anything, such as the Triband Council for the city of Frenia, or the king of Iron Sage, or the chancellor of Taladegarios, they get fleshed out, but they might get a half a page or a page backstory, or 3 or 4 page backstory, depending. But then you have the King of Glandamere, who is literally 3 lines. So major characters come with, plot points, same as with details of.
Absolutely. When you've got plot, well, then you need characters, and sometimes historic mythic figures, great heroes of old. Those things are gonna, those things come about because you need them for something, even if what you need them for is a red herring. Just something to throw the players off a little bit, to make them think, well, maybe this is that. Sometimes you need to create those sort of legendary heroes of old, and sometimes they are plot important. I want to jump back and forward simultaneously. Lollipop said that her creation was just so that she make the character she wanted, and I want to stress that by jumping back to the sharing your world building for just a second. In that, I think it is very important. The world is a big place, and you're going to flush out a lot of it, but you need to leave room in the margins for the players to invest in your world. And that's what they're doing. When a player starts writing their backstory, there's nothing worse as a player than writing a cool backstory and then trying to figure out where that backstory fits in the homebrew world you're playing in, and to be told it doesn't, and that you have to change it to fit the world. It sucks, because now I've got to completely rethink my character, and I hate that. Now, it's understandable if you this is you're stepping into a game, you've brought a character, and the DM goes, "Oh, that's not going to work as well because in my world this." Okay, well then maybe I didn't have all the information, and I picked a character that didn't fit in the parameters, and I can look back. But if it's sort of standard world, or you've been given the rules by the DM, here's what you're allowed to do character creation wise. Here's what's off limits. Then nothing sucks more than not being able to find a place to sort of wedge in your your backstory idea into the world. There are lots of corners of the world, and you need to share it with your players because it helps them feel more invested in the story, and you want that. You want them to help tell the story. And just them simply plopping that thing on the map somewhere, going, I pick here, and throwing a dart at the map and going, my character's gonna be from there, and this is what there is like. It's cool. It gives them some investment.
Here's the thing. I call myself the world's okayest DM. Everybody knows that. It's even my Twitter handle, Tyr, the world's okayest DM. But what a lot of people don't know, and I've shared this with some people, is that when people sit down at my table, my goal is for it to be the best experience they've ever had. I want to be the best DM they've ever played under. That is why I allow my players part in creating. It allows them to bring this character that they see to life. It invests them in the world, not only in the world, but in the backstory. They are attached. They are invested. They are a part of things. And that's one of the things that draws people to my table, is that it's not just, okay, you're a fighter, or you're a thief, or you're a druid. No, you're an individual. You have a story. You have a purpose. You have beliefs. You have hurts. You have joys. You have memories. And those things, okay, yeah, I'm giving up some creative control, but I'm not the type of person that I have to control every little aspect. And by giving it up, we're working together and we're making the realm a better place, because Brax, your paladin, perfect example. You created noble ruling houses in Glandomere, in the city of Glanberry. Mm-hmm. Glanberry is a one-sentence note to me, or it was. But now it has more depths. It has ruling families. It has political intrigue and strife, and there's things to grow from there and expound on, because I took the stance of yes and let you create these things so that you could bring to life your vision of this character in my realm, and I'm the richer for it, because now 20 years from now, if I'm still around and another generation of people is playing through Ruth Kesha, well, they're going to get to experience these ruling families, or the relatives, the ancestors of these ruling families. There's history there now. There's more. The world is now more.
Descendants. I think descendants is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
I'd make that mistake all the time, which is why I'm hyper vigilant about it. And thank you, Ustad, for saying Brax is awesome. For those who don't know, which I'm sure is most, Brax is not a character I played on stream. Brax is as a paladin I created for a one-shot, the one-shot that Ustad won in one of the giveaways. Brax is a Leonin paladin. I took the most noble of beasts and of beast peoples, and the most noble of classes, and I made a gutter punk out of them, who serves justice, and that's his whole thing. I even made a mini for him. I don't know if my camera will focus. There we go. Kind of in focus there. So yeah, Brax was a lot of fun, and he's and I made him completely because I wanted to play against type for a character, as against type as I possibly could. So in sitting down to write the backstory, I was like, well, why is this kid the way he is? Why is he so against type? And started writing the backstory and realized that, it made more sense for him to have been the heir to a noble house who ran away because he didn't want the responsibility. That fit perfectly with everything that the character is. And so then I needed a place to put him. And so I pulled up the map that Mev made of Runeth Kesha, and I went and looked for a spot for him. and I'm like, oh, there's this place. It's got to be somewhat important because it's really close to the biggest city in Glandomere, but it's this little speck on the map just outside that's got a name, Glanberry. And I'm like, that place feels like it is tangentially important. You know, like the capital used to be there, and then it got moved to the port. You know, like that's with the name like Glanberry in Glandomere, and then it being right next door to a really important to the biggest city in the nation. Like in my head, I was like, this place used to be the capital at one point in history. Used to be important. There are some very important noble families living there, and that's what it is. And so I messaged Tyr and was like, hey, can I create a couple of noble families living in this place and have my character be from them? And he was like, absolutely, because Tyr's cool that way.
Again, like I said, I want it to be the best experience that you've ever had. When people ask you who's the best DM you've ever had, I want the answer to be me. And I'll do whatever it takes because I'm prideful that way. But we are going to go ahead and take a break.
Oh, good.
Because
I'm almost out of coffee.
We'll be back in about 10-ish minutes. Get your questions ready. We love your questions. We absolutely love them. We'll be back, guys. And we are back. Thanks so much for hanging out while we took our break, handle everything, get our beverages of choice, and so on and so forth. Today we're talking about world building and answering your questions because we love the audience interaction. I don't care what anybody says, we have the best audience, period. On all of our streams, on Cast Guidance, on the Dark and Queen and Shadowed Rose, and on Scions of Oblivion. We have the best audience. We have the best moderators. You guys are awesome. Awesome.
Amen. All right. Where did we leave off? I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
Oh, we were talking about sharing world building and,
yes.
and letting players participate. That's what we were talking about. Yeah. So like, there was a comment from Ustad said that he's really interested in detailing, but is stuck because he's not as familiar with your world. That's where you have a conversation, Ustad. You have an idea for a detail you want to include in an area. Just ask the DM. Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Does this work? And then have a dialogue about why or why not it might work, and if it doesn't exactly work, how it can be tweaked to make it work. That way you've got, you and the DM are, as we said, sharing the creation. And then you're both invested in it. And that's what you want, right? That you want when you create something in someone else's world, it helps you be invested, but you want the DM to be as invested in it as you are, to be as intrigued by it and to see the plot hook potentials in it so that they might decide to use it later. When I created Helmson in the Iron Sage, I was excited about it because I got to build a thing, but also like the potential for how that might affect the gameplay overall, how it might affect the world later. Seeing it be used by the DM for other things.
And I was excited that, letting you create this, because that just, like I said before we went to break, that just gives me more resources to pull from, more content that I don't have to sit down and create, because I don't have time to fill in every little detail, nor do I want to fill in every little detail. I want the players to help me fill in the details. I want you guys to help me. I want this to be our world. I want it to be something that we build together.
Right, and yes, absolutely, Ustad. Hive mind creativity. And Rush, you make a great point. Yeah, the introduction of firearms historically is game-changing. And so what does it look like when a new technology that it's that potent, maybe less potent in a fantasy world than it is than it was in the real world, because you've got mages who can throw fireballs at people. So guns aren't as big a paradigm shift in a world with magic. They're more of an equalizing force for the people, for those who are not magically inclined. And you can play with that power dynamic. What does it mean for the mages now that humans have this technology, or now that non-magical people have this technology? I think it'd be really interesting to build a society in the world where if you've got a fairly a normally D&D level magic throughout most of society, put put a culture in somewhere that has shunned magic as evil because of something that was done in their past, and they have excluded and repressed magic from their society and have developed this technology of firearms in its place. And how does conflict between that group and other groups that use magic, what does that look like? Are they religious zealots because they're anti-magic, or are they just or is it just a principled thing if it's not religious? Like, what does that look like? And figuring that out is one of the fun parts of world building for me. Why? What did this change in their development? What does it look like now?
So, I created a steampunk setting where it was meant to be a tabletop miniatures game, like Warhammer 40K. But it was 3 factions. It was military, science, and magic. And that you talking about that just made me think of that, because they were these 3 factions that were using these crystals that were energy, basically, to power their faction. And the military had figured out how to weaponize them. The scientists had figured out how to make basically area of effect, that sort of thing. And then the people that lived on the island where the crystals were found figured out how to harness them for magic. But that is a great idea. I may have to create a society that has shunned magic now. May have to do that.
Yeah, and like we said. All right, I want to jump back for a second. I said earlier that the world is large, and Tyr has said it a couple times. There are places that just have a sentence associated with them in the world. Just the barest. This is a place. With no details as to what that place looks like. And we just talked about about Langrenton and Iron Sage. It is a huge city, which means that there's a lot of room for filling in details and creating groups and organizations and things that exist in that city. That city's kind of a world unto itself. And so you've got the overall world, and then you've got the world within Langrenton, and you can create what that sphere looks like inside of the larger sphere. And so there are nooks and crannies all over the place that you can go, this is here. And, the world is a big place. There is, I'm going to get the name wrong. I know I am. 2 seconds. As I pull up the map.
The
map. I believe it is the Sharkandor map that I'm looking for. The Weeping Wasteland of Sharkandor. Basically has, I'm looking at the map that was drawn, and there is nothing shown to be there. It is just a big wasteland. But there's got to be something there, right? And maybe there was something there anciently or whatever. But that seems to me a great place to put a society that has developed very differently. Also, on the Sharkandor map, going up the Jasper Coast, there's a huge, appears to be tundra area up in the northwest section. That's just a big flat plain of ice, and it seems to me like a group that has settled there. You would expect like people who are surviving in such a harsh terrain to be using magic to do so, but what if they're not? What if they're what if they have found a different way to thrive there than using magic? but they're just so remote that most of the world doesn't know they're there. And because they're so different, when people do encounter them, it's going to be a very interesting experience. So yeah, that's the sort of, like I said, there's room. There's plenty of room to add things to a world, to a full world. I mean, you go and you look at Forgotten Realms, or you look at Eberron, and they're basically one continent worlds. A lot of D&D worlds don't have more than one continent that's been delved. I believe Eberron has 2 continents, one of which is a very wild place that doesn't have the Drow have a civilization there, and the Giants have a civilization there, but nobody else really does. And the Giants used to be very powerful, but aren't anymore. They used to be very intelligent, and now they're not, because of world development plot reasons. And so, but we know from the Eberron lore that there is at least one more continent where groups have come from and settled in ancient history, but they're not explored in the traditional lore. So you, as a DM, if you want to DM a story set in Eberron, but you don't want to be as constrained by what is on the map and what is in the official, you could run a game about taking a party of characters from Eberron, from the continent, from the main continent in Eberron, and having them go exploring and finding the other continent. Now, it's not going to be canon, obviously, because it's your game, but it's still that continent would then be your world that you get to fully create within the world of Eberron to let your players experience. So yeah, there's a lot of room to put things in.
Yeah, it's like you're talking about the Weeping Wasteland. There's a lot of shit hidden in there. That's where the Druids Enclave is. The Lunar Dancer Druid Enclave.
Right.
It's in the Weeping Wasteland. But there's a lot of shit hitting in the Weeping Wasteland that people haven't discovered yet.
Right.
There's things in the Tundra area. If you look on the map, and I'll put this map up on Twitter later, but like the farthest north we've gone is the tip of Anvilhold, where Keep Gregorgarian is.
Right.
You know, we haven't gone farther than that. So there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been explored, and that's the beautiful thing about creating a world, is that you don't have to explore everything the first game, the first campaign. You know, you explore part of it, and then you can bring in other parts of it in the next campaign. And because some campaigns, look, I'm going to say, and this is a very unpopular opinion, campaigns end. You know, you get to the end of a story. Some are not very long. Some are not meant to be very long. Some are, you get to the end of the story, and now it's time to see, do you keep playing these characters, or do you start something new with a different story arc? But the story arcs end.
I'm going to say something, and this is I'm sorry if this is controversial, but like you said, campaigns end, and a campaign to me is like a relationship. Like our society, we deem relationships to be a failure if both of you got out of it alive. Till death do us part is a societal norm for us. So if a relationship ends prior the death of one of the people in the relationship, that relationship is looked at as a failure. But you can have short-term relationships that were successes because both of you came away from them better. Maybe the relationship ended because you two weren't going to be compatible long-term, but you decided to enjoy each other's company while you could, or you're in different places in your life and it's not feasible to work out a long-term relationship. But that doesn't mean you can't have a good and fulfilling experience in the short term. The same thing goes for campaigns. When you go on YouTube and you watch people ranking subclasses for D&D, you'll notice that they very often discount the capstone power at the end. They don't put a lot of weight on it. And the reason for that is because 90% or more of campaigns aren't going to reach a level where that becomes important to the character. And even when you do hit that 20th level or 18th level and get that cool capstone, you're not going to play very long at that level. So those powers, as awesome as they are less important to the overall how good the subclass is, because you're just not going to get to play with it as much. The stuff pre-level 10 is what most people are going to get to use out of that, because a lot of campaigns aren't going to get past that level 10 mark, and if they do, they're probably not going to get past level 15. So you've got to, you kind of got to moderate your own expectations, and just, accepting that and having fun with it while you can. Some campaigns are designed to go the full 20. And even then, scheduling conflicts and things like that, people having to drop out, not everybody's going to make it through the full 20. Not to mention character deaths and whatnot, but then you're just going to bring in another character at that level, and unless your GM is a complete dick. I always hated that in second edition was the worst, where if your character died, I had a DM and he was a great DM mostly, and he was one of the best for playing. His games were amazing, but if you playing second edition, you died, you came back in with a level 1 character and you were never catching up. You'd catch up a bit in the short term, but especially with the way the rules for how XP worked, whoever got the kill got the XP in second edition. I coming in as a first level character amongst a group of 12th level PCs, I am squishy as hell. I am probably going to die, and I'm definitely not going to get the kill and get the XP. There was no catching up. They fixed a lot of that in third edition, where they made it ramping, so it was much easier to start at first level and catch up to a higher level group. And they also started the more XP sharing, where the party defeated the bad guy and the party got the XP. Now I am very much a proponent of I, the player, get the experience. And that's the way I handle it at my table when I'm running. The player got the experience because the player did the playing, and the experience the experience points go to the player. Yes, the character gets the benefits of them because the character also gained the experience, but the player is the person who actually owns that experience. And so when the character dies, the player retains that experience and gets to bring it in. And that's a holdover from when I used to play Vampire LARPs. We had rules where if your character died, you got to keep a percentage of your earned XP to apply to your new character, which kept characters, players who had been playing a very long time, from being super overpowered in the face of new players, but let you still feel like you weren't starting completely over again at level 0, because you still have a 3/4 of your XP moving forward.
Well, even back in second edition, when I did XP, it was always divided amongst a group. I thought that was the only fair way. Used to, what I did is if you died, you came in a level lower. And
that's fine. Yeah.
Now I'm just like, bring you in the same level.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to, especially in the way 5th edition works. There's no reason to penalize a player for, especially if their death was a cool story note, or if they just what happened on Sunday. Pants. Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen Sunday's game, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers.
Pants decided to not continue with the group, to stay behind because it was the right thing for his character to do. It was a very emotional thing for all of us, for Pants to decide to not continue on the journey with us. But it made good story. It made sense in the story. And it doesn't make sense to me to then penalize Patrick for playing his character correctly and doing what the character would probably do in that situation, to say, well, you know, you're bringing in a different character now, so you're going to have to start a level behind everybody. No, there's no cause for it.
No,
Especially playing in a milestone system, because playing in a milestone system is very different. If you're playing by milestone XP rules, there is no chance to catch up. It's everyone gets their level at the same time. So it's a very different dynamic. You can't, offset as much. Everyone levels and everyone stays together, because that's the way milestone is meant to work. The XP thing from second edition. I remember very clearly playing in a game where we captured a ship. There was a ship in port that we were supposed to slip aboard and take something from. I don't remember the exact plot, but we slipped aboard to take something from there, and wound up killing the crew that was on board. And then we had a ship. And I remember the session ending, and our rogue, who was the one who did most of the throat slitting of the sleeping crew, looking at the DM and going, so I get 1 XP for every gold piece I steal as a rogue, according to the rules, right? DM's like, yeah. He's like, how many gold pieces is a galleon worth? And the DM was like, shit, you did just steal an entire ship. And looked it up and was like, well, you just leveled 5 times, but I'm not going to allow that. You get 1 this session, and I'll give you 1 at the end of next session. But yeah, so like the way the rules were written, it was very much an every man for himself sort of thing in second edition. That was one of the failing points of second edition. And I think is what set the mindset that we see in a lot of the problematic, I don't like the changes they've made to D&D group of curmudgeons that don't like the changes that Wizards of the Coast is making to D&D. They're, because they had an us against them mindset playing.
Right.
Because that was what the game fostered.
It did. And I'm sorry. I didn't
mean. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say that the game in a game that is supposed to be about collective storytelling, fostering a me against the rest of the party and me against the DM mentality about my character leveling was antithetical to how the game should work.
I'm going to cast a tangent here. This is completely off topic, but it came to me because you brought up, spoiler alert, Pants decides to stay with Tarios as Tarios' bodyguard, and Tarios, for those that don't know, Ben had to leave because of real life issues. We wish him the best. We got nothing but love for Ben. There's no animosity, none of that.
None at all.
It's just real life became too much for him to devote time to streaming every week. Players are allowed to change their minds and control their characters. This is a perfect example. When it was initially discussed, Pants was going to stay with the group. He was going to go do his own thing, let Tarios be the king of the Minotaurs, and was going to do his own thing. But it wasn't right. It didn't feel right. It wasn't right. And that was Pants's decision. That was Patrick's decision, that it wasn't right. I didn't know that he changed his mind. But as a DM, I had to give him the opportunity in game, because we had talked about it above board, because we knew Ben was leaving. I had to give him the opportunity in game to make that final call. I had no idea which way he was going to go, because when we originally discussed it, he was going to go with Pants was going to stay. Patrick, Tosh was going to stay with the party. But so players are allowed to have agency of their characters. They're allowed to make decisions. They're allowed to change their minds. And if it throws you for a loop, it throws you for a loop. You recover. End of my rant. I had to get on that soapbox for a minute.
Absolutely. And you know what? And sometimes this is, I'm gonna cast another tangent to follow your tangent, or to tangent off of your tangent a little bit. I think one of the best things they've done in 5th edition was Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because they implemented rules for changing your subclass mid-play. And they gave you a way to do it story-wise, or they gave you a way to just buy a different subclass if there wasn't a good story reason for you to change. And I absolutely love those rules. I have now had 2 characters utilize those rules. One because of plot things that Tyr did to my character, with my consent. We talked about it. And the other because I wrote the character one way. This is Karak. I wrote Karak to be a Tempest mage, or a Tempest cleric. And then looking at his backstory went, I really can't justify that. I can't justify him being a Tempest cleric. He should be a War Domain cleric. It fits much better. But that's not what I really want to play. And so Tyr and I agreed pre-game that there would come a point when a change would happen to Karak. And so that Karak could be the Karak I built him to be originally. But I still had fun. Like, even though I knew that it was not who the character was going to be by the end, playing the War Domain cleric for that character at the beginning felt right. It felt good, and it let me experiment with a class that I probably wouldn't have picked up otherwise for the time. And then to have that switch happen was a really cool plot in game. It was great story. I absolutely loved sinking my teeth into getting to play that. And then to finally get to see the character realized and for him to be the character that I designed him to be was also a thrill. So, there's those rules, that versatility in changing your subclass so that you have more agency over your character. And even if it could just be, I built this character thinking it was going to work this way. I got into the game. I figured out it doesn't exactly work the way I thought it did. I'm not having as much fun as I thought I would. I would like to change my subclass to this one over here and see if that one works better. And as a DM, I think you should be all for that. You should be like, yeah, absolutely. I want you having fun at my table. And if this subclass you chose isn't working out the way you thought it would, fucking A, change it. Make it, and we can find a way to make the change happen and the change be cool. Make it part of the story. Or we can just ignore that it ever happened and not let it be part of the story as is appropriate. Like, nope, you were always, you went from being a thief rogue to being an inquisitor rogue or inquisitive rogue, whatever it is. Inquisitive is mage, isn't it? I don't remember. There's a mage there's a rogue that is basically the Sherlock Holmes class.
Yeah, it's the Inquisition, the Inquisitor.
That's though they were always that. We just
And here's something to let you all in on. I hadn't read the rules for changing subclasses or anything when I agreed to this. It just made sense to me. Looking at the backstory, looking at what Locke wanted to play, I was like, I don't see why we can't change it. And then I came up with the how and when it would change. You know?
Yeah, I think Tasha's. We heard a rumor that they were putting in rules for changing subclasses, or at least I had. I'd heard a rumor, but I don't think Tasha's was out yet when we were building the character and doing the auditions and playtesting. And I was like, yeah, cool. Well, we'll figure it out. There's supposed to be rules for this coming out. We'll see what they look like. But, you know, yeah, let's do it. You know, my other character, Dar, Dar picked up one of the Umberkai cloaks and put it on. And then Tasha's came out, and they came out with new subclasses, one of which did a lot of the same things that my character already did, but did them in a slightly different way. And when I didn't die from wearing the cloak started to infect me or affect me and change the way that the things that my character was already doing work. And so I switched subclasses to from Battle Master to Psi Knight because of the influence of the cloak.
That was good times.
It was good times. It didn't change a lot because I was still like the Psi Knight, you know, depending on which maneuvers you take. The maneuvers that I took as Dar as a Battle Master and the powers granted by the Psi Knight like lined up really well. It didn't affect what I did in combat almost at all. Except that I could fly. Or, well, I could jump really good. It wasn't quite flight. But yeah, so it didn't change a lot. It just, now it's colored slightly differently. It's got, you know, different lighting effects on it when I do it. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to play.
All right. Do we got any more questions, chat? Anything at all. It can be about world building, it can be about anything, tabletop related. Hell, at this point, be anything.
I mean, does anybody want to know what I had for dinner last night? Or no, I'm just kidding. Oh, I had lasagna, Rudolph. I had lasagna because memes and other media things featuring lasagna kept showing up in my feed for like 3 days in a row, and I was like, God damn it, now I want lasagna.
Cool.
Oh no, Stod's having internet issues. I can't speak right now.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. They are also soft. Some words are cuddly.
Some words are vicious.
Draco, you had lasagna too. Did you keep seeing that meme with the ropes and the whips? Is that just me? Yeah, there was a meme with like a bunch of bondage gear laid out on a bed, and a plate of lasagna sitting in front of it also on the bed. And it said, "Want to come over and hang out? I have lasagna." And like that meme showed up like 8 different people I know posted that meme, or it showed up in different groups that I was in. So, Rudolph wants to know, how do you feel about killing a PC on a random encounter, not storyline material?
Death happens.
Yeah.
Look, here's when characters get to a certain level, when a party gets to a certain place, it's hard to challenge them in combat. And the only way to challenge them in combat is to give them something that has the potential of killing one of them or all of them. Now, not every combat has to be challenging, but some combats need to be challenging. They're getting deeper into this world. Their adversaries are getting deeper entrenched. They're getting closer to whatever, and so the forces that are fighting against them are going to fight harder, that sort of thing. That being said, I had a character, second episode, Pants, Akatosh, was brought to 0 hit points by a rat and was making death saves and almost died because they couldn't get healing and was doing shitty on their death saves. It happens. It wasn't plot material. It wasn't storyline. It was players making questionable decisions leading to questionable actions. What's your take on it, Lark?
Yes. I know. I 100% agree with you. I think, especially as you get into the, you get above 7th level, when you encounter random encounters, there is especially if you've been fighting big bads and things, there is a natural inclination by the players to start to get a little bit cocky, to start to feel like, they are the shit. Like they can handle anything, within reason that gets thrown at them. And sometimes bad dice rolls on the party's side, good dice rolls on the DM side, a little bit of, some mistakes made with, using your action economy effectively and whatnot. And, someone can die. And I think that can be as much a good... the impact that death has on the party can be as good a storytelling argument... storytelling... I've lost the word I was trying to find there. Element. As good a storytelling element as the big bad killing them. That gut check of, oh shit, one of us just died to this random thing, and we're fighting these things that are so much bigger, that are so much more powerful. We're up against these odds that are so stacked against us, and we just got taken out by a beast in the woods that wandered up to our camp. Like that's a gut check in the party. Watching the party process that and deal with possibly some members now having a fear about them not being ready to take on the big bad or whatever. Like, there's a lot of good meat on that bone to, I'm not talking about human tofu again, but there's still there's a lot to sink your teeth into there, with regard to how to play your reaction to that character death. So I'm all for it.
And it doesn't have to be a beast. Another example, Dark and Queen in the Shadowed Rose, the ones we run on Saturday night. We were like 3 episodes in, and they hit a wild magic area, and while trying to cast a heal spell, rolled shitty and killed the player. Like, dead. Like, they had no death saving throws left. They were dead. And it was random chance by the will of the dice that they met someone that for a very steep price could bring the person back. But it was just wild magic being wild magic, and and the people using magic in a wild magic zone. It had an impact. It, as Locke said, it was a great element to the story. And now when wild magic areas appear, the players are more cautious. They are very careful with what they do and how they do it. Instead of just thinking, oh, we're the characters. This is a storyline, and we're on stream. We're invincible. Now they know they can die, you know, and that's one of the things, you know.
Yes, Draco, and that is what you walked into discussing earlier. There is a tofu that is now designed to simulate human flesh for those who are cannibalistically inclined. And yeah, that was what we were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, yeah, no, the you know, deaths happen, and you can't predict when they're going to happen, and you so you have to sort of, you have to roll with it. And as a player, if it's not your character who died, you get the joy. I'm using joy as a loose term there, of figuring out how your character reacts to that, and getting to delve that emotion, and play with it moving forward, and see how your character is affected and how it changes them. And that, does it, if you're a cleric and one of your players dies in front of you and you were unable to save them, does it change your faith at all? If you were a person who doesn't have faith and, you see a character die, what does that do to you? How do you feel about it? Has your character experienced death up close? I'll say yes, most characters have, because, and I'm not talking about, killing bad guys. I'm talking about death of someone you cared about. And the way most people write their backstories, your parents are probably dead and died horribly and tragically right in front of you, and that has been the reason for you doing all of the things you've done up until now. But if you're like me and you don't write tragic backstories for your characters, has your character experienced this sort of loss before, and what does it look like to them? So, those are important things to figure out about your character, and you don't have to figure them out in the moment. Your character could just, could react one way at first, and then, because how often do we see that in reality?
Yeah.
Someone seems to react to something one way, but it's because they're masking. And then down the road, the things they've been bottling up, the emotions they've been hiding behind that mask start to bubble out. And that can be a cool thing to choose to do with your character, is to react one way at first and then let it slowly come out that that's not really how you felt the whole time.
Very true. All right, guys. Any more questions before we wrap up? I'll give you your 20 seconds, because there's a 20-second delay from the time I ask the question to the time you gets it. If not, we'll go ahead and say our goodbyes and get the fuck out of here. But it's been fun today. I've had a blast.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
We are here as dancing monkeys for your entertainment.
Yeah.
I hope we were entertaining, and I hope you will, you were all invited when I finally put together my Whistle Stop Cafe fried green tomatoes screening with the human tofu.
All right. Doesn't look like there's. See, that's the beauty of it, Black Dragon. You pay me, and I keep my clothes on. All right, let's go ahead and tell people who we are, where they can find us, and get the hell out of here.
Yeah. So, hi, gamers. I'm still Loch Clark, and you can find me on the Book of Faces and the Twitter Patients at Loch Unruly. That's Loch with an H.
And I'm Tyr the DM, the world's okayest DM, and you can find me along with Loch and the rest of the crew. Me and Loch are here on Fridays at noon. We're here for the Dark and Queen and the Shadowed Rose, a blood hunter, mostly blood hunter campaign that is running on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then there's Scions of Oblivion, the campaign that runs in the same place, same time, so they're run concurrently. They do impact each other. That runs on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find me on Twitter at tier_the_DM. Thank you guys so much. You have been wonderful today. Remember that when times get dark, you're not alone. Find someone to bask in their strength and the light of their love until you become stronger. Remember that love and inclusion, these are the torches that light a path to a better tomorrow. Come join us and be torchbearers. And remember, if someone doesn't know, don't cast aspersions, cast guidance. Until next time.